Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Planters Knowledge. Originally, I called it Planters Knowledge Pop Up Podcast because it was like, okay, whenever an author is available, we just gonna pop up and have a show, which I still follow that rule of thumb. But I realized that podcasts are usually just audio, and all of my interviews are video. And then they created this word called vodcast. So, welcome to Planners Knowledge Podcast. And I am here and so excited to have this guest who is a longtime friend and recent author as of January to the Self Care Activities for Women, Dr. Cicely Horsham-Brathwaite.
There's a tambourine. We're
There
going to
is.
church today.
Yes, of course we are. Which is so apropos for you and me because that's where we met.
That is true.
Yes, welcome, welcome. How are you?
Oh, I'm well. I'm so delighted to be here with you. Happy to have this conversation and to
Mm-hmm.
be in community with one another.
Yes,
It's been a while since we've been able
it
to do that.
has. It has.
Yes.
Y'all, she gonna bring the tears to my eyes. She always be talking straight to my heart. Let,
Oh, I'm over here tearing up myself
look,
too.
see, look, y'all, go ahead and get your tissues ready. You know,
Right.
we're therapists. We keep ours.
I know my
We keep
box is
our
right
hands
here.
right.
My box is right here,
That's it.
ready.
All right, y'all know if you are a longtime follower and fan of my shows, then you know have your pens and papers ready because there is always going to be a takeaway for you, a takeaway or two or three or more. If you are new to the show, get your pen and papers ready. We'll give you a little moment to go get that because we're going to drop some gems. That's just the way that we do. Whenever we have conversation, there is always going to be a takeaway to help your life be better than when you first came on. Tonight, we're going to talk about Dr. Cicely's author journey, and also what led her to write this book, some activities that are in this book, and just get to learn about her. So let's start this party off right. And if you haven't subscribed, let me say this, please be sure to come on over to the YouTube side of life and subscribe to Ask Dr. Walls 525. All right. So Cicely and I had the opportunity to meet. Can you believe it's probably been 20 years? It's been more than 20 years, actually.
Yes,
It's more than 20 years.
it is more than 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Did we meet in like 2003?
2002
Two?
or 3, and it was
Okay.
2. It was 3, and this is how I know. So, I was in the process of doing my dissertation,
Mm.
right? And I had gotten to a point where I was stuck. I just didn't want to write anymore. And I was doing everything but writing, including literally painting the kitchen. So, I just didn't want to do my dissertation. And my parents had just joined a new church, and I went with them, and Cicely was there to visit. And we ended up talking that day. And I'm trying to think, I think you had either just finished your program or something. And I told you where I was in my program and working on my dissertation. And you gave me the words of encouragement that I needed to literally go home and finish my dissertation. And from
Mm.
that moment, I always refer to you as my dissertation angel.
Ah, wow, wow. I mean, I I think I might have uh just finished. I think I defended uh my dissertation sort of like the earliest possible date I could in
Mm-hmm.
2003 in order to graduate that spring.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember meeting. First of all, I didn't realize that your parents were new to that church.
Mm-hmm.
I just assumed you all had been part of the community for a long time, but
Mm-hmm.
I I remember meeting. I remember just so deeply needing community.
Mhm.
and um, and meeting you and learning that we were in the same field. We've been
Mhm.
on a very similar journey,
Mhm.
um, and to be able to just see each other and
Yeah.
understand each other,
Yeah.
um, and be embraced by you and your family just
Mhm.
made a world of difference for me.
Mhm.
So I would call you all sort of like my family connection angels,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, during that time when I was trying
Yeah.
to figure out what my life looked like post
Mhm.
graduate school, when
Mhm.
most of my classmates had moved away and I needed to
Mhm.
create a new life.
Mhm. Mhm. I thank you for sharing that. We have some people on the call. Welcome, everyone. We have a student here who's currently getting her doctorate. So
Ah,
she knows that feeling of community and that need for community and connection. We also have a good evening from Marvette.
yes, Marvette has been on this journey. We met during my doctoral program, uh, through her now husband,
Oh, wow.
and she is a dear friend.
Hmm.
Hi
Hmm.
everyone, and it's wonderful.
Yes, so we have so many people joining us. So good evening and welcome everyone. So let's talk about this. So let's first tell people about you. You're a psychologist, so forth. Give people a little bit of flavor about who you are.
Sure, sure. Oh, hey, Mike. Mike. So, um, well, first of all, I just can't pretend that I am not super emotional right now.
Okay.
Um, I guess we'll talk about self care and how I came to
Mhm.
it, but one of the ways is that I took a self care class while I was in my doctoral program that opened my eyes to another way of living and caring for myself, um, and what I've learned over the years is that such an important part of caring for yourself is your membership in community. And
Mhm.
you and I have a relationship where we might not speak for years,
Mhm.
but we
Mhm.
can call each other out of the blue to say, do you know about this thing? Or how are you
Mhm.
doing?
Mhm.
And mean it. And so I'm just so very touched, just to be here in this space together. And
Mhm.
I always, whenever I go back to Philadelphia, because I live in New York now, I think about who I was
Mhm.
as a younger woman,
Mhm.
and where my life has taken me.
Mhm.
And so part of sort of like where my life has taken me is that, like many of us, I grew up in a family where we were taught education is paramount
Mhm.
and paramount to providing access to that which
Mhm.
those who came before
Mhm.
did not have access to, fought for, died to have.
Mhm.
And I also was taught that giving of myself, service to others, was
Mhm.
such an important part of my identity and what we do as a family.
Mhm.
And so I went to school. I was in school from pre K until I earned my doctorate.
Wow.
And I lived a life of being under constant scrutiny and evaluation to meet other people's expectations.
Mm.
And I did what I was supposed to do. I
Mhm.
have had a few different branches of my career. I'm a counseling psychologist.
Mhm.
Back when I went to school, mostly what counseling psychologists were trained to do was to be professors or work in
Mhm.
college counseling centers. Of course, there are differences, right? And I think the differences are less stark than they used to be, but that I did those things. I worked in a college counseling center. I was a professor. I had a brief foray into a private company for a little bit, and then
Mhm.
went back to college counseling centers and then led them
Mhm.
for several years before moving on to what I do now. And so, but part of that journey has been to unlearn patterns of being that
Mhm.
I was taught, that were passed on, that did not support my health and the
Mhm.
health of the folks that I love. And
Mhm.
self-care has been one of the pathways towards that. And uh, since my dissertation, I've been working with individuals and groups to help them strengthen their self-care. And I
Mhm.
think it has had also a positive impact on my family, particularly the women in my family.
Mhm.
So who I am is a sister, a spouse, a friend, a family member, a community member, deeply invested in us finding ways both to give of ourselves and to pour back into ourselves.
Mhm. Mhm. So much. So what's got you so emotional, darling?
Um, I have no idea. I mean, some part of it is just joy for us to be here together.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
always have deep conversations, so I don't
Yeah.
want to oversell it for the audience, but we always, have conversations. And I guess I'm also just really thinking about, I didn't know back then,
Mhm.
21 years
Yeah.
ago,
Yeah.
where our lives would take us,
Yeah.
what we would contribute. And
Mhm.
in this moment, I feel proud of the
Mhm.
contributions that we've both made.
Mhm.
I know that you
Mhm.
are a multi-passionate entrepreneur and
Mhm.
clinician, and
Mhm.
such a contributor to your family and your family's
Mhm.
legacy.
Mhm.
So I think I'm feeling all the things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thank you for sharing that because I know as people are listening, they're feeling it. As you even talked about the expectations, right? You go to
Mhm.
school, you're seeking other people's not necessarily approval, but approval,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, yeah.
Right. Right. You're not thinking that that's what you're doing, but that's what you're doing.
Mhm.
And until we call it out, we continue
Yeah.
to follow in that space.
Yeah.
And then unlearning that behavior because it is not always the healthiest
Yeah.
behavior because many times we're moving unconsciously and subconsciously,
Yeah.
right? And we're looking to meet this standard that someone else has told us is the golden standard at
Yeah.
all costs.
Yeah.
And I remember going through school and after finishing my doctorate, being so wound up
Mhm.
because I was moving at such a rapid pace. I
Mhm.
accelerated my undergraduate program. I finished in 3.5 years. I
Mhm.
accelerated my master's program. I finished in about 16 months.
Mhm.
And this is before there were accelerated programs. So
Mhm.
I was doing that
Mhm.
myself and I accelerated my doctorate. I
Mhm.
finished my coursework. I was, I think, the first one to do it
Mhm.
and I'm not talking shortened semesters, full
Mhm.
semesters, overloaded, all of those things. And at the end, it was like I got used to doing so much that it was like, if you don't come off of this wheel,
Yeah.
you're going to be burnt out
Yeah.
before you hit 40.
Yeah.
And so, what are those self care
Yeah.
activities that you need to do? And I remember laying on my couch going, bring it down, girl, bring it
Mhm.
down. Like you got a whole life to sustain. And I'm moving like a stallion. And
Mhm.
I'm like, you got to bring it down. And I have to watch myself when I do that because I feel
Yeah.
myself rev up and I am capable of a lot.
Yeah.
And then you have to learn to balance that out.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something that came up as you were talking that I think uh, maybe doesn't get talked about enough,
Go
which
ahead.
is that when you are in school,
Mhm.
um, and having to operate at a high level.
Mhm.
For me, that was probably not uh, until my doctoral program, to have to work in a certain way, but probably that's not true. But um, you and you're still developing,
Yes.
like, so it really impacts your development.
Yes.
It impacts your social development, your emotional development in ways that I see now, though I don't work with adolescents anymore. I see
Mhm.
in kids in high performing high
Mhm.
schools,
Mhm.
independent schools, that have to meet a certain level, and you begin to see yourself as your accomplishments. And it's not enough for someone
Mm.
to say you're separate from your accomplishments. I mean, you
Mhm.
really are forming your identity around
Mhm.
someone else's external measure of
Mhm.
whether or not you meet the mark.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and my colleague who my colleague and friend who's on the line too, we
Mhm.
went to a doctoral program that was very, we were nurtured.
Mhm.
I've since supported folks in doctoral and medical programs, who face things that I never had to face. But
Mhm.
but there is something about having to prove yourself over and over to get
Mhm.
this thing you really want, that
Mhm.
really just, like, for lack of a better phrase, f's with your sense of self.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
and so I guess that just sort of comes up for me, and taking classes outside of my discipline, like the
Mhm.
self-care class, like reading
Mhm.
books on healing, and reading Debrina Jackson Gandy's book, um, on self-care back in the day. That those were wake-up calls for me. Those
Yeah.
were consciousness raising opportunities that I hope to share,
Yeah.
through my work with people today.
I wish I had even thought about it because I still have the book that you gave me when you were moving back to New York. It was essential something. I can see it. It's on my primary shelf upstairs.
Mm,
But it
mm.
was basically essential ways to care for yourself. And we started talking about chakras and
Yeah,
different ways. So, you've
yeah,
been on this self care journey and imparting self care for a long time. Like I said, I can take it back to
yeah,
21 years because it was you who we talked about my throat chakra and led
yeah,
me into
yeah.
moving into singing lessons.
Yes, I remember.
Remember? Remember?
Yes.
So, yes, yes. We got some comments in here I want to pull up and just highlight. So, Jamila says, I felt that 100%, especially with closing out my dissertation. I'm constantly looking for others' validation and
Mhm,
approval.
mhm, mhm.
And then ML says, unlearning those lessons to the journey to success is so powerful. Those lessons serve their purpose, what we're crushing at times. So I appreciate the idea of unlearning it, honors and acknowledges.
Yeah.
And then Tanya of Tanya Evans, Advantage Evans, if you all need some understanding into crypto and
Mhm,
demystifying digital money, definitely check
mhm,
out Tanya Evans' book.
mhm,
I'll grab it. It's right behind me in a moment. But she said shake a tambourine to what we were talking about. But she said she hadn't thought about it that way. So true as a high performing athlete, because she's a former tennis pro and
mm.
scholar, it's taken my entire second quarter of life to unwind.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead. What's going through your mind? I'm just gonna grab her book from right
Oh,
behind me.
sure, sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that unlearning and unwinding is an ongoing and conscious process, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that it requires community. I think that sometimes when people hear self-care,
Mm-hmm.
they think of bubble baths and
Yep.
spas and
Yep.
getting your hair and nails done.
Yep.
And uh, I think it is so much more than that.
I agree.
So I think I'd like to
And let me jump
share.
in and
Yeah,
say
go
this
ahead.
real quick. I think when it does get equated with bubble bath, spa,
Mhm,
massage, manicure, pedicure, it tips the balance towards the feminine
mhm.
and it leaves out the masculine need for
Yeah,
self care as well. And those are kind of those subtleties that we truly have to be
Yeah.
mindful of, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And it's so interesting because, I think things self-care gets feminized,
yeah.
and as it does, uh because of the way uh the society that we live in here is set up, that the power of the feminine gets minimized and denied. And it's kind of interesting.
Mhm.
Like my first
Mhm.
book, I have it here. My first book is like pink, right?
Yes.
And so people associate the pink with women, and I'm happy with that. And I will also say that men who have read my first book
Mhm.
and utilize the practices have said, like that's really helpful. I Someone in my life was sharing with me the other day uh, that they were speaking to another male who talked about self care being a key to their business success,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
And what I
Mhm.
know now, having studied how to support business owners, I know now how true that is. And I also
Mhm.
see the evidence in my own work that when I'm taking care of myself, it it allows for things to flow differently in
Mhm.
my life. And so how I define self-care comes from a nursing researcher,
Okay.
Dorothy Oram, and her definition of self care is the acts that an individual takes on their own behalf for their health and well being. Right.
Mhm.
So initially, her research was around, do folks who have been diagnosed with something in the hospital or by their physician or medical practitioner leave the treatment facility and then go uh, take their pills or
Mhm.
exercise the way that they need to maintain their health. And so you do it to be well. And so when I share that definition with people around self care, uh, it helps them to begin to interrogate, are the things that you're doing helping you to be well? And I believe that there are three different types of self-care that each person needs. That you need regular self-care, those are your habits that you set up in your daily life, that my first book talks about, that help you to feel well and take care of yourself. That's your morning routine, your evening routine, your sleep hygiene.
Mhm.
um, then I believe we need responsive self care. Responsive self care is either self care that you engage in to pre cope for situations that are coming up. So you are about to go into this meeting with someone that spouts out misogynistic
Mhm.
statements, or always you to demonstrate your right to be in your role, right? And so pre-coping might be to have in your mind, what are the responses that you were going to offer when they inevitably say the things that they say over and over, or
Mhm.
when someone else makes the comment that you made 5 minutes ago
Mm.
but it wasn't acknowledged. What are
Mhm.
the strategies that you're going to prepare yourself with to be able to respond? And then,
I already see people going like, "Girl, you are speaking." Look, for those who are like, "Where them tambourines?" They right here. She
yeah,
is speaking that language.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
that is
yeah.
real talk right
And
there.
then, and
Yes.
then responsive self care is also, while you're sitting there and you are thinking in your head, they have one more second before I say the thing that needs to be said. The responsive self-care is, okay, what I'm going to do is take some deep breaths
Mhm.
and really center myself. I practice energy psychology, which is,
Mhm.
for example, EFT tapping or TFT tapping are
Mhm.
two modalities that fall under that. Um, I I do different things to soothe and calm my body. Folks who are somatic practitioners teach somatic techniques to be able to respond in the moment, to take care of the body. And
Mhm.
then restorative self care. Restorative self care I see as things that you need to plan to do that take you away from your everyday environment, whether that is
Mhm.
the spa appointment, the massage appointment, whether that's the vacation, that help you to balance yourself, gain some perspective outside of your regular environment.
Mhm.
Okay, but that could also be the once a week bath that you take, that you
Mhm.
make your bathroom into your own home spa and you have that
Mhm.
experience. So it is the intention of creating a comprehensive strategy and system.
Mhm.
And then I think the overarching theme is that self care is bi-directional. As
Mhm.
I take care of myself, I
Yes.
demonstrate for the people in my universe the importance of how I care for myself, the
Mhm.
boundaries that I set around this is the time where I no longer answer phone calls unless it's an emergency so that
Mhm.
I can begin to wind down for the evening. Or this is the hour that I take to go sit and drink my lovely tea and read my book. That
Mhm.
boundary teaches other people it's okay for us to have boundaries.
Mhm.
And it also encourages other people to begin to engage in practices that help them to feel well. And
Mhm.
so, my ultimate goal is to contribute to a million people creating self care habits
Mhm.
that are part of the legacy that they pass on in their family.
Mhm.
We often are
Mhm.
focused on generational legacy of increasingly people are talking about generational wealth, and that is important.
Mhm.
But the
Mhm.
Congressional Black Caucus published this research brief that showed this model of how uh, if parents are wanting to create a legacy for their children, that legacy can equally be met by focusing on well-being as it
Yes.
is on education and achievement. Because
Mhm.
if you are achieving, and you're not well, then you are unable often to pass on something that you would
Yep.
want to pass on and endure to the next generation.
Yep.
If you are focusing on well being, folks who are well are able to participate and thrive in creating wealth and passing it on. So you can enter in both ways. But
Mhm.
oftentimes, because of the ways that many communities have been disenfranchised from opportunity, we
Mhm.
focus on the doing and being and having and
Mhm.
not as much on the health. All right,
Mhm.
I'm off my soapbox, but
You're not, girl. You stay right there on your
that's
soapbox.
that's
You giving the people what they want and what they need, because it's so funny, as you said, generational wealth. What I ended up writing was generational wealth and well-being,
yes.
and then you came out and you said the well-being.
Yeah.
So Tanya had asked the name of your book, so this is the one that just came out, was published in January. Yes,
Yay.
yes, there we go.
Yeah.
And it is available physically in Barnes and Noble stores across the country, which is super
Yeah.
exciting. So if you want to walk into a bookstore, you can actually walk in and get it. It is also available on Amazon. If you want them to bring it right to your door, you
Yes.
can do that too. Is there a Kindle? Is there electronic version?
There is a Kindle version.
Okay.
Yes.
All
Yes.
right. And
Yeah.
then the first book, tell us the name of that one again. I'm gonna go back and pull it up as well.
That's Better Daily Self Care Habits,
Okay.
Simple Changes with Lifelong Impact. It's based on the habit loop. And the
Mhm.
acronym I use for the habit loop is TAG. Um, you start with a trigger, an action, and you notice the gain, which helps your brain to do the things it needs to do to lock in the pattern over a period of time. And new habits that we develop are developed more strongly and more effectively when we do those things in joy.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
So, of course, I'm going to recommend you get both books. So,
Yeah.
because this way you have a complete set. Number one, you can
Mm,
see the reference points that she's talking about, and you can start to incorporate these wealth habits, these health habits, these
mm,
well-being rituals into your daily life. And as she talked about, for self, but also reciprocity for showing,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
For
Mhm.
community as well. Because people do need to know that it is okay. A lot of times people hear boundaries and they think of it as blocking people out. And there's different ways. Sometimes it is blocking people out, but it's
Mhm.
also conserving your energy. It's also protecting your energy. It's also restoring
Yeah.
yourself. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, how many times have any one of us been in a situation where we spoke to someone that we care for, whether we care for them in a deep loving sense or care for them as a member of the human family in
Mhm.
ways that we weren't proud of,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And imagine what we bring to our relationships with our spouses, with our children, our stepchildren, our colleagues, the person at the grocery store,
Mhm.
when we are actively in the pursuit of strengthening our well being,
Mhm.
our
Mhm.
emotional health, our mental health, our physical health. Like, imagine
Mhm.
the ways that we can show up in these continuously challenging times in the world. And it also doesn't mean, I think uh, it is easy to think that self-care is just about hearts and flowers, but sometimes self-care is about truly expressing your rage
Yep.
and not holding that in and not pretending that which is unfair, unjust, ugly is not what it is.
That's right.
And uh and also that I believe part of self-care is participating in things that have meaning to you,
Mhm.
right? Whether that is
Mhm.
through your volunteerism, whether that is through your uh, political activity, your advocacy, your activism. I
Mhm.
believe that those things are deeply part of how how we are well and how we
Yeah.
help to create the conditions of a world
Yeah.
that that can meet its highest ideals.
Mhm. Mhm. And how you show up for yourself, and that's one of the things in the self-care activities. And I know it says for women, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. But you talk about five different areas of life
Yeah,
in here.
yeah.
And so let's talk about those five different areas and why you chose to highlight those five.
Yeah. Well, I think so. The things I didn't say is that I spend my days working with leaders,
Mhm.
um, helping them to look at ways to lead more effectively. And sometimes that work has me um, coaching folks around their businesses. Sometimes it
Mhm.
has me providing therapy, often to senior executives, um, and the theme across all of that is I tend to work with high performers.
Yep.
And I also, it's no accident that I get sent folks who are addressing the very same things that I constantly have to address in my life.
That's
I
right.
can see it. I can see it because I know it. And one of the
That's
things
right.
I know is the tendency to intellectualize rather than feel.
Mm.
And so, what I have found through writing these books is that folks who may not have been open to therapy before begin to tend to their emotional life or think about tending to their emotional life when they start to engage in emotional self care, whether
Mhm.
it's noticing how you are feeling and labeling that emotion, whether it is um, taking the opportunity to talk with someone else, to share with them how you feel. So I thought
Mhm.
it's important because it's a place that provides such an opening when I'm working with people. The physical self care is that I learned this really from my husband, that so often our culture teaches us that physical self care and exercise are about the size of your body, but it
Mhm.
really is one of the best things that we can do to mitigate stress.
Yes.
And so um, I find it helpful for people to think about engaging their bodies in different ways to help
Mhm.
them feel well. That is around engaging in positive psychology principles and activities like taking a savoring walk.
Mhm.
The mental self care, I mean, because our thoughts can be just like tigers.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
um, and finding ways to notice our thoughts,
Mhm.
counteract the ones that are not helpful to us, nurture the
Mhm.
ones that do help us to get to where we want to go,
Yes.
is why the mental self care is there. The social self care is because in our busy lives as grown folks,
Mhm. Mhm.
so many people, and I've experienced this myself, have not nurtured their social relationships
That's
because
right.
the kids need this, our parents need that,
Yep.
and our jobs need this and the
Mhm.
bills need this.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so finding ways to like nurture those relationships as an individual, as a family, if you're coupled, to be able um, to do all of to have that as an active part of your life. And then my favorite part about this book is the
Mhm.
professional self care, because like low key, I think about work a lot.
I don't think
And
it's low key, honey. You're right.
it's
You're
not
right.
low key.
No, it's not.
And I think about, I'm someone like, I love to have a challenge in a job, and then I meet the challenge and then I'm ready
Mhm.
for the next thing. Like
That's
I'm kind
right.
of entrepreneurial about
Yes.
how I approach
Yes.
those things. And but I also think that career development is not
Mhm.
something that many of us, even those of us who've been super successful,
Mhm.
experience. So that can
Yeah.
be, you worked at the same company for 20 odd years and then you don't know how talented and skilled you are,
Yes.
or you're 55 and you don't know if you um, can switch a job,
Mhm.
um, but but no one told you to start to think about ways to make you marketable. I
Yes.
have a Facebook group where in the past I've done weekly talks on topics around self-care, leadership, and what I realize is there's all this information out there that in our busy lives we just don't realize we have access to,
Yes.
about how to support yourself in your business. So I'm really
Mhm.
excited that that part is there. And I also know,
Mhm.
like, we think the way to be successful is to do more, and that
Mhm.
is not true. It's to be strategic about what you do and make sure other people know.
You
And
know, if we
so
were
this
in
is
the
my way of
club,
telling people.
if we were in the club, I'd say rewind. Say it again for the people. Say it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Because we have been, as we talked about, we've been conditioned, we've been programmed to do more, and doing more means being more successful.
Yeah.
And right, as opposed to being strategic, because we can be busy being busy, but it doesn't mean we're being productive.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean that we're being productive and in alignment with who we are. It doesn't mean that we're being in alignment with our divine purpose and the divine
Yes.
plan for our lives. And if
Yeah.
we don't take that time, as you're talking about, to get back in alignment with who we are through the self care, take
Yes.
those walks, right? Feel the connection, get back into life's rhythm and harmony so that you can then produce and be productive in the way that you've been divinely designed to do so.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I feel where I have shifted is um, to help myself uh, be open to where spirit leads me,
Mm-hmm.
and to help my clients begin to think about two things.
Okay.
One being strategic,
Mm-hmm.
and the second to develop mastery.
Mm.
So this is what I want to say about strategic. I mean, you just said it, and I want to restate it.
Mm-hmm.
We live in a context where if we belong or any aspect of our identity has been marginalized, that daily you are facing an onslaught of stressors, and to not have a strategy and a plan for how you navigate those stressors,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you know how to create a strategy and plan for your job, for your kids' lives, for your spouse, for your friends, for your pets, for everybody else, is um, is problematic.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking a disservice to
It's a
yourself.
disservice.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have a strategy, and I think for a long time I believed that the strategy was be successful, make more money,
Mm-hmm.
um, find a partner, do
Mm-hmm.
all of the things, check the boxes,
Mm-hmm.
without thinking I was a box checker.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that is not authentically who or we what we are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what I've been sort of exploring is, one, so what does it look like? And
Mm-hmm.
these are the conversations I have with myself, with my clients. What does it look like to have a strategy?
Mm-hmm.
And it often is hard. It's
Mm-hmm.
often hard. We can we can strategize the heck out of getting things done when it needs to be
Mm-hmm.
done, making a dollar out of 15 cents.
Mm-hmm. A
But
dime and a
suddenly we
nickel.
don't have time, except often we make sure that that hair is done. We make sure
Mm-hmm.
that those kids have what they need.
Mm-hmm.
Not even what they need, what they want.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it just doesn't, the math doesn't math. And I think,
Yeah.
so what makes that difficult? I think what's difficult is that often we haven't learned to develop relationship with ourselves.
Mm, 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 mm. Yeah, you know I'm throwing these tambourines at her. Yes, it is so
and
important.
and it is scary to be intimate with ourselves,
Mm,
to see ourselves,
mm-hmm,
and to acknowledge the voices in our head that tell us that we're not fill in the blank enough, or
mm-hmm,
we're not doing enough.
mm-hmm,
And I think we often have a hard time saying that for ourselves, to
mm-hmm.
ourselves, and we often have a hard time being in relationship with other folks who we can be that vulnerable and transparent
Yes,
with.
yes.
And so, of course, I mean, this is an oversimplification, but like, of course, we would keep moving and doing and seeing ourselves as the roles that we fulfill in our lives. And I think, and I think that slowing down being purposeful
Mhm.
around your self-care
Mhm.
starts to make the the land underneath your feet more solid so that you can begin
Mhm.
to do deeper work,
Mhm. Mhm.
deeper, different work.
Right.
And that deeper, different work is about being clear, as you talked about, around what you have been called to do,
Mhm.
what your purpose is, where you have been led, and where you develop a sense of mastery.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing I'm excited to help folks
Yeah.
do,
Mhm.
because it hasn't always been safe for us.
Mhm.
Um, we are at a time now where um, some of us have had the experience of access
Mhm.
where now we can meet more than our basic needs, and we can then explore
Mhm.
um, in ways that like our grandmothers or their mothers couldn't do.
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
that's sort of the leading edge.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Mhm. It ain't
that's what
no
I'm feeling.
it ain't no anyway, because you speaking to look, you speaking to him. Tanya said, "Oh, she coming for me again. She filling up my cups before mine is filled, filling up other cups before mine is filled." Strategic wellness. That's the next book.
Mm,
And
yeah.
yeah, I mean it's real. And then the rest is, and JJ Hannah put, rest is a biblical principle.
Hmm.
Hashtag spiritual alignment.
Hmm. Hmm. I find myself, I want to hear from you, like what's coming up for you in this conversation.
There's so much. I'm over here taking notes, and I hope other people are taking notes as well. You know, as you were talking about see ourselves, what I heard was seeing ourselves as our roles is something we have to be careful of,
Hmm.
right? And instead, we should be seeing ourselves in the roles. Because when we see ourselves in the role, then we understand that our role can change over time. When we see ourselves as our role, then that's more chronic. We tend
Hmm.
to get stagnant and stuck in that, because if I am not that role, then who am I?
Right, right.
Right? And so that then impacts the self care, because, well, I can't do that because that's not a part of the role. That's not part of the assignment that comes with the role. That's when we're seeing ourselves as our role. But
Hmm.
we have different roles.
Yeah,
And in order for us to be healthy in our different roles, we have to understand that the role is separate from who we are. It is just a role that is
yeah,
going to change over time. Go ahead.
yeah. I mean, maybe this is something that I don't talk about publicly, but I feel called to in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we see ourselves as the roles we don't have,
Come on.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So that could be you saw yourself as a wife
Mm-hmm.
and you are not.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I saw myself being a mother and
Mm-hmm.
I am not.
Mm-hmm.
And my journey around that has been one of sadness and pain that
Mm-hmm.
what I had hoped for, what we had hoped for, um, what our family looked like,
Mm-hmm.
uh, is not what it is. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's an ongoing uh, journey. And one of the ways that journey has showed up for me is recognizing that my legacy
Mm-hmm.
and opportunity to contribute
Mm-hmm.
still exists despite
Mm-hmm.
the fact that I never had a child,
That's right.
right?
Right.
And so I spent a long time thinking about what I was not.
Mm-hmm.
uh, in a way that uh, kept me from seeing what I was and what I am,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And kept me from actually standing in where I felt I was being led to contribute
Mhm.
in the world,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that's uh, it's an ongoing process, but
Mhm.
something I guess I want to say that we each have a space of meaning, and if that space of meaning is entirely what we are or are not to others,
Mhm.
um, what then what then are we missing?
Mhm.
What then are we not paying attention to or cultivating?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
often uh, without opportunity to look at that, we don't realize it until that role is no longer there.
Mhm.
The person is no
Mhm.
longer in our life for whatever reason. The children
Mhm.
have left the house, and
Mhm.
I find, some I work with folks also who are closer to retirement than not. And
Mhm.
when you think about one of the ways that it's hard for folks to slow down is that you are still parenting or working at the pace where, like, yes, you did have to make the choice before. Like, it was get your teeth brushed and throw on some clothes so you can get those kids out of the house into school, or
Right.
working multiple jobs so that you can make sure that they had access to activities.
Mhm.
That's not the way you
Mhm.
have to live now.
Now, that's right.
I see it. I see it in folks, nurses I've supported, where,
Mhm.
like, anything could be life threatening when you
Mhm.
are working with your patients, and then your life approaches, anything can be life threatening. And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
I think it just takes reflection. It's not about making
Yeah.
these life choices or situations wrong. It's about saying, does the context of my life right now require this thing?
Mhm.
Or
That's a
does it
great question.
actually offer me space to create a different life?
Mhm. Mhm. Right, being very conscious about what the context of your life is. I
Yeah.
recently, there was something I reposted recently that said something about like break up with your past so that you can finally be in the present,
Yeah.
right? And when
Yeah.
we think about anxiety, it is the possible future. It's make
Mhm.
believe. We haven't even gotten there yet, and
Mhm.
it means we're out of the present moment. And so
Mhm.
we have to take, my phrasing is honest inventory
Yeah.
of the present moment. And I remember doing that with my father,
Yeah.
where he was used to getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and being at the office by 5:30 in the morning. He was in business for himself for 41 years
Mhm.
before he made his transition.
Mhm.
And looking at his work habits and
Yeah.
looking at the impact on his overall health. And I remember sitting down with him and saying, Daddy, we're all finished school. We have
Yep.
bachelors, we all have masters, we all have doctorates at this
Yeah.
point. The pacing at which you're working was the support of family and a lifestyle that is no longer needed because we're all grown, we're all in our own homes, we all have our own careers. Like that
Yeah.
rigor, you don't have to do that
Yeah.
anymore. And
Yeah.
but he had, like, I think of it like an elliptical machine. He had built up
Yeah.
this pace and this movement, and he hadn't taken the time to slow
Yeah.
down and take honest
Yeah.
inventory of where his life was and what they needed at that point in time.
But, and I want to add to this, and
Mhm.
I'm going to say it. I'm going to just share a little bit of your business.
Yes.
When you think about the context, right? Like, I know that you come from people who had some access,
Mhm.
uh, you know, at least a couple of generations before
Mhm. Mhm.
others of us, right?
1700s.
Right.
1700s, right.
So,
I am
so
fourth generation college. My great great grandfather went to college. Yes.
yes. So, and I didn't even know it was four generations. I just knew it was right. And so from that context, I also know that the spirit of to whom much is given, much is required
Mm-hmm.
is very strongly incorporated into your family and its
Yep.
legacy.
Yep.
And it's like I don't have an answer for that, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I support folks who do movement work, and I don't have an answer for.
Mm-hmm.
There are real challenges that people face across a variety of issues.
Mm-hmm.
There is the reality that there are multiple wars happening at one time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so there is this reality of the pain, of the urgency,
Mm-hmm.
and the desire to contribute.
Mm-hmm.
And I think every person must come to for themselves to understand, how do they live in that dual reality,
Yep.
and at the same time, how can we as communities begin to see, like, that our health, our well-being is also important and urgent,
Yep.
because we need those of us who care for there to be justice,
Mm-hmm.
there to be access, to be
Mm-hmm.
deeply involved. So I just want to say, like, it's like, it's not that I don't conceptually get what how high that responsibility is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I and I feel like we can at least add to that legacy, um, actions that help us to counteract
For sure.
all that we face.
For sure. So yeah, so years ago, I want to say it was 2009, 2010. I remember having a conversation with another friend who's a psychologist, and she was talking about looking at her life and what her life existed of. And I had one of those, like Robert Townsend, for those who remember Robert Townsend show, or That's So Raven, where she said something and I zoned out and I have no idea what she said at that point, because I was totally in my own reality. And it was, what is at the center of your life? And if, I was like, well, God is at the center of my life. Now, mind you, she's still on the phone and I'm internally having this conversation. And I'm like, God's at the center of my life. And it was like, yeah, great answer, Kathleen. Sure it is. But no, it's not. What is really at the center of your life? Cough it up. And it was like, work is at the center of my life. And it was like,
Mhm.
exactly. Work is at the center of your life. And then next thing you know, I drew, I had a piece of paper in front of me and I drew a spoke and a circle, and I was like, all right, or actually, I did a table, and it was like, work is at the center, and it was like, okay, what are these, what are the legs that's holding up this table? And it was like, if
Mhm.
work is at the center, your table's going to crack. All right, it's not going to hold it. You have to have health
Mhm.
at the center, because if you don't have health at the center, you don't have anything, right? You
Mhm.
can't work the way that you want if health is not here. You can't play like you want if health is not here. And so, what do you need in order to have a balanced table? You need to have playtime. You need to have your spiritual time, right? You
Mhm.
need to have your rest. You need to have your exercise, right? And we know that the more legs that you have at a table, the sturdier the table becomes.
Yeah.
And so it became a method for me to make sure I was
Mhm.
tending to my health, because without that, I mean, I'm not here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would add to that the recognition that everything in this country is aligned and set up for us get a message that our health is important,
Mhm.
but to also get strong messages that working hard, having money, uh, going hard are the things that will bring joy.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, that our economic system depends on our consumption and contribution
Mhm.
that chips away at that table. If you
Mhm.
so I think
Mhm.
without that analysis,
Mhm.
then if we just look at it as an individual,
Mhm.
it can be very demoralizing
Mhm.
uh, to advance your aims. That's why
Mhm.
I'm just so appreciative of seeing this model that you have and of having this conversation, um, because I think these things aren't insurmountable, but you need community.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
need community.
And you do. And, thank goodness I have, friends who check in
Mm-hmm.
with
Mm-hmm.
me to make sure I'm doing these things. One
Mm-hmm.
of my closest on here right
Mm-hmm.
now, JJ Hanna,
Hey, JJ.
she's been on me for almost 30 years about the rest,
Yeah.
because she knows I move at such high energy and I don't need a lot of rest, but
Yeah.
I do need rest.
Yeah.
Making sure that I eat. We've worked in crisis
Yeah.
environments where it's like if you don't eat first thing in the morning, you're not eating until 6, 7 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Because I worked in environments where I had to do restraints, and I'm getting
Mm-hmm.
called over the loudspeaker and I'm running to another part of the facility. So these end up being things that you learn. Yes, I see Tanya put, so many of us are caught on the hamster, right?
Yeah.
Caught on that hamster wheel. And if you're not intentional about getting off of whatever hamster wheel you're on,
Yeah.
you just keep staying on it. And so there are times where I literally had to sit myself down. I do mirror talks. Like,
Yeah.
I legit get in my mirror
Yes.
and I'm like, girl,
Yeah. Write that down, everyone. I'm gonna add that to my repertoire for myself.
yes, I do. I had a bunch of talks with myself today, different mirrors all around the house.
Mhm.
How you doing? What's going on? Do you know you
Yeah.
realize you did this? Girl, do you realize all that you've done since dot
Yeah.
dot dot, and start taking inventory of that and feeling it, as you're saying, not just running past it, feeling it and taking honest inventory of it. So many times we discredit ourselves and our life experience when we say, it's just bothering me just a little bit. It's not that
Mhm.
much, or I don't care, or
Yes.
no use complaining. Nobody's going to listen anyway.
Yes.
I
I
don't
don't have my tambourine,
I
but
don't need I
yes.
got you. I
Yeah.
got you. Look, because guess what I do? Mirror in hand. I'm going to listen to you. What's wrong? What's
Yes.
going on? What do you need? What do you want? How can I help? We doing too much, or we not doing enough? Like, I have to have those conversations with me. I have to see, what do my eyes look like? Am I
Mhm.
feeling sad? Am I tired? Girl, you look tired. Take your butt
Yeah.
and go lay down. Okay, right.
Yeah.
I have to look out for me. I love that I have other people looking out for me, checking in with me, because as you mentioned, community is important. Healthy community is important.
Yes.
We also have to have what you mentioned as well, honest relationship with self.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I mean, I love that activity that you do with yourself, and you gave us such a gift.
Yeah, yeah. And I also tell myself when I look good.
Oh, and you do look good.
I thank you.
This
Thank you.
hairstyle is like, I've seen different ones over the
Yes,
years,
thank
but
you.
this, um, yeah,
Thank you kindly. Thank you kindly. Now, y'all, I know my friend very well. She puts out a lot, and I know when she's ready to call it a day.
Oh, I'm thinking like I feel like are there some parting words I can offer? But yeah, I'm
I
and
love my look. I love my Virgos, and there are several Virgos on this call tonight, so they know. They
yes.
know. Okay, your
And
Gemini
some
knows
folks
you
who
all.
know what it's like
Yes.
to live with a Virgo. Um, um,
Anything you do want to tell? Look, y'all. I encourage you definitely check out this book. I know it says for women, but would you recommend there are things in here for men to do as
yes,
well? Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
And uh, what I would say is get in the habit of asking yourself, what do I need?
Mhm.
Just asking yourself, and you will find over time, once you notice what you need, you will begin to feel compelled to give yourself what you need.
Yes.
So begin to just to notice, whether it's my book or someone else's, whether it's
Mhm.
a blog, an Instagram account, have something that starts to give you ideas about how you can tune into yourself and practice self care as a pathway to your well being.
Mhm.
What the research shows is that two of the most effective ways to deal with the stressors of our day, one
Mhm.
is to have movement, to exercise at the end of the day to complete the stress cycle. And then the
Mm.
other is to have someone that you can talk to,
Mhm.
to be able to just share about your day. Those are two ways that you can begin to mitigate stress.
Mhm.
Um, so I would say that, like, start from wherever you
Yeah.
are. It's instead of going for big aims, start with something little that helps you to nurture yourself the way that you would nurture a beloved child or friend.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and uh, I thank you for uh, this invitation to be here with
Mhm.
you. I
Mhm.
thank your community, um, for this time, whether they're watching now or later.
Mhm.
And I welcome people staying in touch with me. You can follow me on Instagram at Dr. Cicely Brathwaite. Um, and you can join my Facebook group, The Restored Leaders. I think there's a link in my bio on Instagram. I pop in there when I feel up to it and interested and called to. But it's a positive place to be.
Yeah.
But mostly, I just want to say, um, I'm so glad we connected,
Mhm.
at this time.
Yes.
So
You are
um,
welcome. And
yeah.
I'm going to say this to you that, mothers come in many forms, and mothers are nurturing, mothers are loving, mothers are caring, mothers are giving, mothers provide wisdom and knowledge. And that's exactly what you did tonight. You were a mother to many, and you have been a mother to many. So let's not get caught in the biological only sense of mother, because all mothers ain't mothering.
Mhm.
All right. So you have provided so much, and there's so much outpouring that is coming to you right now. Jamila says, thank you so much for the discussion tonight. Both of you are amazing. JJ Hannah says, thank you. This was great.
Mm.
Tanya says, thank you. Regina says, great connection.
Mm.
Tanya added an amen.
Thank you.
So
You.
important. So
Uh,
y'all definitely be sure to check out her books. Get her books for yourself. I encourage people to support authors, support women authors, support authors of color, support Black women, right? The writing part, and we can come back and talk about that another time too. The writing of it, because
yeah.
so many people on this call are interested in being authors as well as are authors. I talked about Tanya at Advantage Evans. She
Ah,
has the digital money
yes.
demystified. She is one of the leading people in the cryptocurrency space, not as far as selling it, but teaching you about what it is. So I
Mm.
encourage you to check her out over at Advantage Evans. Her book is also available. You can go to digitalmoneydemystified.com. Tanya, if I got that wrong, please put it in the chat. But it's also available on Amazon as well. If you are part of my Goal Getter 101 community, you can go to goalgetter101.com. I have some specials coming up about joining Advantage Evans. We got some percentage offs. Also, I know some of my community members are in here. So, this is the infamous Dr. Cicely, who was highlighted in one of our emails last week. Um,
Thank you.
and I encourage them to get your book because one of their assignments was to practice self care.
Ah, how
Okay.
beautiful.
And so to utilize the strategies that you put in your book, I was saying we're currently doing a 100-day challenge. We're on day 40 today of working towards our goals. And so here you are with 101 self care tips.
Ah. All right, goal getters.
That's right. And that's what I told her. I said she didn't know we was having one, but
No.
they can pick a self-care habit and add it into their day as they move towards a May 25th 100 day activity. That's right.
Oh, I
So,
love
or
it. I
end
love
of
it.
their journey, end of their 100-day challenge journey. They will continue to work on their goals as they go forward. And self care is definitely a goal that I would say we encourage you all to have. So, sis, thank you. So
Thank
fantastic to
you.
see you. You're welcome.
Uh,
Thank you, everyone else who's joining us. For those, again, I invite you, please subscribe to the Ask Dr. Walls 525 YouTube page. I do about 5 shows a month guaranteed. Next Wednesday will be Wealth Wednesday, where Brian
ah,
Brogan will be joining us, and we talk about family and finance. We talk about wealth legacy and so forth. Then the first and third Tuesday of every month is the greatest blueprint, where we're talking about mental health and well-being. Then we have our Sisters for Harmony vodcast on the first Thursday of the month, and then Stronger Together with my husband and myself, Edmund, on the third Thursday, and then all types of other things. Dr. Marquita is supposed to be coming on one of these days so we
ah,
can do the flowering fashionista and talk about all her
ah.
fabulousness. So there's always a lot going on the
Oh
Ask
my
Dr.
goodness.
Walls 525 page.
And the greatest, that was your first book.
And the great, I know, and now I have so many others, right?
I
So I have the
know.
greatest soul journey.
Yes.
I have Live by the Spirit.
Yes.
And then I have my children's book series, The
Yes.
Adventures of Froggy T and Bunny, The Reunion, Feeling Fear,
Yes.
Bunny Gets Bullied, and Froggy Foo and Mungu. And
Yes.
all of them have a glossary at the end, as well as activity questions, because we got to get the kid. They're great conversation starters, but
Yes.
they're for families and teachers and counselors, but also for self-reflection
I love it.
within the children. And I'm super excited. I'm working on the next one that'll be out in about a month or two, and that one is called Careless Clueless Cult, and looking at social cues
Oh, I
and
love it.
how to miss them.
You'll have to come to my Instagram. We'll
Yeah.
do something live.
Oh,
I would
fantastic.
love that.
Of course, of course. Thank you. I accept.
I love that.
All
Oh,
all right. All right,
okay.
y'all. Be well as always. Continue to live your greatest life, and God bless. And I'll see you real soon. Be well. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Good night.